Hi folks, Six Slices here. Now you'll see on the screen here a couple of case trappers. Now the trapper is one of those stalwart designs that appears in every limited edition range of every knife company that makes traditional knives. So they can become a bit common and you can get a bit used to them. I don't actually have that many. I've got these two. These are the small 3.5 inch ones, and I've got one case, I think it's 4 1/4 or something like that. I just didn't have it to hand when I was starting to shoot this, which is a shame. But anyway, these are nice little knives, and they are, a reasonably expensive knife for the size of the thing. The basic trapper is generally a 2-blade knife. Now, both of these are slightly odd in that they have the clip blade that you would expect. So they both have the clip blade as the main blade, as you would expect. That's standard with a trapper. The second blade on a trapper traditionally is a spade blade. Now this one instead has a bottle opener and screwdriver, and this one here has a Warncliffe blade. Which I suppose just goes some way towards my sort of suggestion that if there's a variation knife that anybody's going to produce, they're going to do a trapper version of it. So a trapper Warncliffe in this case, and as I say, this one here as a bottle opener screwdriver, which is just a little bit unusual. I actually find this knife quite a useful sort of little one to carry if I'm going out and about, particularly if you're going anywhere where you might be wanting to open a beer bottle or two. You've got a little blade, and you've got the bottle opener. I've never really found a need for the screwdriver. There aren't that many flathead screws around these days. But anyway, these are nice trappers, and I enjoy them. And I have, as I say, there's actually 3 total in my collection. But I've been lent this one. And this is, without a doubt, the most expensive knife, most expensive traditional knife I have ever had into review, and it's right up there with those Shirogorovs and various other pieces of exotica that I've been able to show you. And this has come from the same source. This one is slightly different though. I mean, obviously it's not a modern design, it's a very traditional design. It doesn't have any of the snazzy ball bearings or anything like that. This is a traditional trapper knife. What is untraditional about it, or a little bit different about it, is that it is made by the Oklahoma-based knife designer Jim Dunlap. Now, Jim Dunlap does a few shows around the world, around America. He usually arrives, he brings some knives with him, and they're all sold very, very quickly. They are stupidly expensive. I believe this one costs just shy of £1,600. That's £1,600, thick end of $2,000. Now, in America, I suspect you would have been able to get it for less, but of course, Heine Haynes bought it at Blade Show, I think, and then they will have imported it into this country and paid the 20% uplift for VAT, and then whatever other duties there are, plus of course their margin on it. So I suspect you could probably got it for less than $1,600, probably more like $1,300 if you'd bought it in America. And if you could get one, and that is very much the difficulty. Jim is a quite well known, but really still up and coming in a way, designer, maker, of knives. And when you look at the build quality of this, you can see why his knives are so popular. Now it's got stainless steel liners, which I'm not a big fan of, but one of the benefits to that is that when you look at the back of this knife, it is absolutely immaculate. You almost can't tell spring from liner. It's that beautifully made. There is a huge amount of attention to detail that has gone into this knife. We've got, I believe it's a stainless steel bolster with a ring around it. You've got an attractive shield in there. I'm not a big fan of shields in bone and stag, as I've said before, but if you're going to do one, you do it like this. This is really nicely done, very nicely inlaid, and it's inlaid sympathetically to the stag. It's not just plonked in there. He's lined everything up very nicely. Obviously, it's a traditional pinned construction, and you can see this pin here is just to hold on the stag, the cover. This obviously is for the back spring, and this one holds on the cover and is also the far end of the spring. Now, it's two-blade trapper. Anyways, it has the lineup of the traditional trapper in that we have a clip blade as the main blade. I believe these are in 154 cm, but I don't think it's marked on the blades at all. But as well as being that very traditional clip, it's a clip that's done in an exceptionally good way, and in some ways quite modern as well. For a start, there is a sharpening choil here, which I think is a very good thing. The lines of his grinding are really beautiful. This is more of the sort of muskrat or California clip that you would expect for a trapper, but it also bears quite close commonality with the Lanny's clip, in that just the way that this swedge is cut, the little curve here and the curve down into the plunge line, is topographically equivalent to a Lanny's clip, if not in actual, in the end the same. It is beautifully finished with a hand-rubbed satin finish to it, and if I turn it over, you can see it is beautifully done on the offside as well as the show side, which is just exquisite. And now, if the main blade is very traditional, one could also say similar things of the spay blade, the secondary blade. But actually, a lot of the features that we see in the main blade, we see again here. Yes, it's a spay blade. It's got the traditional sort of cut-off shape here. It's got the belly and so forth. It's got a bit of recurve in it, which is a little bit more unusual, as had the main blade. I should have pointed out. It's got this lovely swedge on here, and in some ways he's taken those same sorts of design cues from the Lanny's clip onto his spay blade, which again is just beautiful on the other side. The one thing obviously he's had to do to make it work is that he's moved if it was a Lanny's, if he was using the styling of the Lanny's clip, etc., the nail neck would obviously be up here, but then it would be hidden behind the top of the blade. Actually, also having this nail neck down here means that although the action on this knife is, it's a good action, it's not a weak thing. It's probably 6 or 7 or something like that. I'm not good with the numbers, but with having the nail neck all the way out to the end here, this blade is relatively easy to open. Overall, though, I would say the pull on this knife is actually the sort of thing that you would want for a knife that you were going to use. Now, for all this is a super expensive knife and a little bit, scary at that to use, its owner took it out of his pocket where he was carrying it in a slip as his EDC knife to hand it to me for this review. And that's because it's a UK legal knife, and it might be a very expensive UK legal knife, but there's no reason not to use it. And as I say, he just took it out of his pocket to hand it over to me. Now, that spay blade is just over the 3-inch length, but the cutting edge is very decidedly short of the 3-inch length. Do you like that spay blade? I think it's unusual, but it's also quite practical. It's quite a broad blade, so the old if you want a knife to spread your peanut butter, a spay blade is usually the one, but this one is particularly good for that sort of thing. It has a nice half stop, and of course I probably should have shown you when it was open as well. His flushness of his springs is just as perfect in the half stop. And the main blade, again, is just oops, not really in view here, am I? Is marginally over the 3-inch mark, maybe 3 1/16, but again the cutting edge is considerably under the 3-inch mark. So I think the usual sort of things apply. If you are a middle-aged bloke like is the owner of this, even better if you're a middle-aged bloke who's in a wheelchair, nobody's going to question this as a knife. It doesn't even look particularly threatening. I think the slightly large handle does make the blade actually look much smaller. In fact, until I measured them just now, I would have said that blade was more like 2.5, 2 3/4. But there we are. It's incredibly sharp, of course. There's certain things you just have to expect about a knife, and one is that it's going to be sharp. And if you're getting a custom knife like this, it just damn well better be, certainly at the price. And looking at the fit and finish, the grinding on this knife, it is absolutely perfect. And who wouldn't want to carry a knife like this in their pocket? That's that's my thing. I think this is just a really, really elegant knife to have. And as I say, it's very clean and plain. It just has Dunlap written on the blade there, and carried in a nice little slip in your pocket. This beautiful burnt stag. I think it's a phenomenally exceptional knife. We can always argue whether it's worth worth the price. That's always going to be the case with whatever knife you look at. Even a knife at £50 or £100, the price of one of these case knives, you can ask whether it's value for money or whatever, and the answer is probably not. A cheap Ganzo or something will do just as good in your pocket, a little San Remo or something. But if you want a thing of beauty, if you want a piece of man jewellery as much as it is a useful tool, then you couldn't go wrong with this. I think it's very beautiful, very elegant. I love the shapes of both the blades. They are just ordinary clip point and spay blades in some ways, but he's just added that little extra to them. This little bit of recurve in here, which I know a lot of people will hate, and all this belly up here is lovely. These are easy enough to sharpen with a rod system or something like that, and just a little honing and taking a little care, they will keep an edge for certainly long enough for an everyday pocket knife that you're pulling out every now and again to do one little task and then putting away again. It's not as though you are going to use a knife like this in a sort of working situation where you've got your knife in hand several hours a day, and it's actually cutting things all day. I was watching a chap the other day on the YouTube called the Hoof GP, who trims the hooves of cattle, and I know that might sound really dull, but he does quite a good job of it, and you get certain empathy for the poor little cows getting their feet trimmed. But anyway, he has a knife or a grinder in his hand all day, every day. His knives wouldn't last very long, but you wouldn't use a knife like this if you had a job like that. You'd use a knife like he has. Looks like it probably costs 50 quid or something like that. And every now and again, he throws it away and gets a new one because they're sharpening them every day and they're wearing out in no time. But this, if you're just carrying this in your pocket, it's going to last you forever. As long as you're careful with a bit of stropping or honing rather than going to a full resharpen, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't use a knife like this. Okay, it'll get bashed and chipped and scraped and there'll be a scratch on it eventually. There's a couple of sort of, I don't know if they're stains, but there's a couple of sort of marks on it already, but my suspicion is that they will just wipe off with a little bit of care. And I'm sorry if anybody's seen any blood in this video, but when I opened the very first blade on the very first case knife, this knife, I managed to cut myself, and I seem to have bled profusely all the way through the making of this video. I'd like to think I've not it's not been too visible in the shots because I keep wiping it up, but anyway, there we go. Blood, sweat and tears. What is it? I've nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat, I think it was, that Winston Churchill said. Well, here we are. I've offered you that, and this little thing of beauty is the result. So thank you very much for watching this stuff. If you would like to if you like the stuff, sorry, maybe you can give it a thumbs up if you'd like to see some more of this. And note this blade shape, because we're going to come back to this probably in the next video, actually, or the next but one. There we go. So thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.